Matt Donnelly, and championship weekend is upon us. San Francisco and Detroit each took care of business at home last week to set up this championship preview that I cannot wait to dive into. If you are setting those lineups here, whether it's in those DFS or those one-and-done contests, we got you covered once again this week as we hand out a little start and sit advice along the way. Now Detroit, they go to San Francisco Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern as 7-point underdogs with an over-under set at 51. So Vegas, they're thinking there's going to be some scoring involved, and you know what? I'm with them. This week, Jared Goff, he is seeking redemption, a chance to make up for a Super Bowl loss with the Rams and to even the score for himself and the Detroit Lions fans who saw Matthew Stafford win a Super Bowl with the Rams team. A little history, if I may. The last time that the Lions were NFL champions, the last time they won a road playoff game was 66 years ago, back in 1957. The road opponent, the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not saying that this is destiny, but I'm not saying it either. Here's a list of quarterbacks to take two different franchises to championships games this century. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, and Jared Goff. I'll also add that Jared Goff is 3-7 against the 49ers, losing 5 straight contests. You can put that into context however you will. Over the last 4 weeks of the regular season, the 49ers have allowed the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, allowing 17.18 per contest, giving up 6 touchdowns and a rushing score. Now Goff, the secret here is protecting the ball. The 49ers had 5 picks over the final 4 regular season games and finished the regular season with 22 interceptions while allowing just 20 touchdown passes. In the divisional round, the game played out much the same as for the 49ers as it had the rest of the regular season. San Francisco, they did surrender a couple touchdown passes, but they were able to pick off not 1, but 2 Jordan Love passes. Look for Goff to once again to pick the 49ers apart. Death by 1,000 paper cut style here with short passes that are going to add up quickly for fantasy. While taking a couple big shots down the field, Khalif Raymond. Now Romeo Doubs, he was the primary target for Jordan Love last week, hauling in 4 passes for 83 yards against that 49ers secondary that has given up some big plays to wide receivers this season. For Detroit, look for Amon-Ra St. Brown to be heavily involved once again, coming off an 8-catch, 77-yard performance against the Buccaneers team there, and facing a secondary this week that is allowing over 35 fantasy points per game over last month to the position, which is also the 11th most. In one-and-done contests, both St. Brown and Sam Laporta are must-starts, especially if you do consider the 49ers as the favorites, or you're buying into that Super Bowl conspiracy theory that logo colors already give us a glimpse of who will be meeting in the Super Bowl in Vegas. Laporta, he was huge last week in a victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, catching 9 balls for 65 yards. And as good as Fred Warner is, he only gave up 3 receptions on 6 targets in coverage for 19 yards last week. Laporta, he's built a little bit different than Tyler Kraft and Luke Musgrave, and he did look close to 100% last week. Now, some news that makes Laporta an interesting play is that the Lions, on Monday, signed Pro Bowl tight end Zach Ertz to their practice squad, meaning should the Lions advance, Ertz could be available to start in the Super Bowl if you choose to start Sam Laporta this week. Now, if you're looking for sleeper options in this Lions passing game, well, there's 2. Well, really 3. I mentioned Khalif Raymond, but there's also Jameson Williams, who happens to be another deep threat and capable of making a big play at any time. Last week, Williams, he averaged 17.5 yards per reception, and while methodically Goff picked the Buccaneers apart, he did take a couple shots down the field, and all Williams needs is 1 pass. Josh Reynolds is one of my favorite sleeper options against the Buccaneers. He did manage to find the end zone, and with extra attention being placed on St. Brown and Laporta, Reynolds, he could see some favorable matchups. On the ground, as good as the 49ers were in the regular season, Aaron Jones managed to churn out 108 yards on just 18 carries while adding in a few receptions there along the way. Tampa Bay, they were a tough matchup against running backs, but Gibbs, he still had 74 yards on the ground on 9 carries and 40 more on 4 receptions, where Montgomery, he carried the ball 10 times for just 33 yards. Now this is key, this is important. Watch that injury report this week, especially how it pertains to Frank Ragnow and the Detroit Lions here. Ragnow, he suffered ankle injuries and knee injuries last week in that victory, but he looks like he's going to play this week. But they did lose Jonah Jackson there to an MCL who had surgery, who's going to miss the NFC Championship game, but he should be available come Super Bowl time. With the injuries to the Lions interior, facing Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead, David Montgomery is going to be very touchdown dependent, and it's going to be tough sledding there inside. Like the 49ers, the Lions defense has been one of the top run defenses all season long. But in that divisional round, Rachaad White still managed to average 6.1 yards per attempt on his 9 carries, while also adding in 36 more yards on 4 receptions. McCaffrey, he did McCaffrey type things again last week, catching 7 balls for 30 yards, carrying the ball 17 times for 98 and a pair of scores. So per the norm, look for the 49ers to once again continue to manufacture touches for Christian McCaffrey this week, especially considering Deebo Samuel's questionable status entering this one after exiting last week's game with that shoulder injury. Now, I mentioned that these are 2 of the best run defenses, ranking 2nd and 3rd in the league, respectively, in the regular season, with Detroit allowing just 87.7 yards per game on the ground and just 82 yards per game on the ground over the last 3 contests, while the 49ers, they've been allowing 92.3 yards per game and have allowed 102.3 over their last 3. San Francisco, they have got so many weapons. Their offense has 7 players that were named to the All-Pro team this year. 7! Now, Brock Purdy, he does an excellent job taking what the defense is giving him. If they take one option away, he's basically got 3 more options, including George Kittle, who averaged 20.2 yards per reception against the Packers on his way to 81 yards and a touchdown. Then there's also Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who are considered to be among the very best after the catch. And we're not even talking about Christian McCaffrey right now. In the rain, Brock Purdy, he did have some badly thrown balls, but he did make some nice passes there as well, including leading the 49ers on a game-winning drive after the Packers pretty much led the entire contest. Purdy would end up with 252 yards on 23 of 39 passing, along with a touchdown pass to George Kittle for a very respectable 17.4 fantasy points. Look for a better performance this week from Purdy, as the Lions are allowing 18.6 fantasy points per game this season to opposing quarterbacks, and just surrendered 28.4 to Baker Mayfield in the divisional round after he threw 3 touchdowns and 350 yards. Mayfield's top target against the Lions, it was Mike Evans, who basically posted 30 fantasy points, hauling in 8 passes for 147 yards and a touchdown. Now, I would expect Brandon Ayuk to benefit from this Lions secondary that is allowing 40 fantasy points per game this season and more than 50 over the final 4 weeks of the regular season to opposing wide receivers. Prior to Mike Evans going off, it was Puka Nacua who had 181 receiving yards and 9 receptions in the wildcard round against this Lions team. Now, I'm not necessarily starting Ayuk in one-and-done formats, but if you're looking at DFS, he is a must-start. Monitor Deebo Samuel's status leading up to this one. Juwan Jennings, he's going to be a low-price play here this week and could provide some sleeper appeal after his 5-catch, 61 performance a week ago after Samuel left that contest. And George Kittle, dating back to last season, he has played 6 games without Deebo Samuel. In those 6 games, Kittle is averaging 5.2 receptions, 90.6 yards, and a touchdown on 7.3 targets per game. That works out to about a 26% target share, a 25.7% targets per route run, 3.31 yards per route run, and over 20 fantasy points per game. If Samuel's out, George Kittle is going to have a big game. Now, I love a good story, and the Lions reaching the Super Bowl would be just that, but I do have the 49ers winning this one. So while CMC, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle are all great starts, I'm holding them off until the Super Bowl. I'm sitting Deebo Samuel because of that shoulder injury, but I do consider Juwan Jennings this week as a starting option here if I'm looking to fill out my lineup. For Detroit, I feel good about stacking Jared Goff with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I prefer Gibbs over Montgomery, but I could also see Campbell and company looking to establish the run early this week after last week coming out not only at the start of the game, but after halftime there, throwing the ball. Laporta, he is a wild card play depending on what options remains, but temper those expectations as we have that best versus best Warner and Greenlaw versus Laporta type matchup. Now, I mentioned Josh Reynolds. He is that DFS saver. If you're looking to save a few bucks there in those DFS contests, he runs a majority of his routes out of the slot, an area in which the 49ers have allowed the 9th most receiving yards this season. As always, this video is being recorded early. I'm talking Tuesday here, so make sure you are subscribed to the RotoBaller YouTube channel and head over to rotoballer.com and the RotoBaller Discord channel for all the latest news and fantasy analysis. See you next time.